Okay. Can you just say a few things out loud?
A few things out loud.
Okay, that one's
There are a
working,
few
and
things
then again.
out loud.
Okay,
Look at all
that
these
seems to
things
be
out
working.
loud I'm saying.
What are we? Okay, there we go. All right. Yes, in case you couldn't tell, folks, this is behind the scenes. That was the fun, janky start, making sure our microphones are actually recording, because OBS decided to change some settings on me without telling me. So yeah, behind the scenes version, completed version with cleaned up audio and times in the show notes goes up later in the week. Yeah, I think that's it. You've been warned.
Yep. All right. Let me make sure I'm on the right page.
Uh-huh.
And a minute 37 has repassed. Okay. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And yeah, last week was episode 700. We're on to 701. It's the beginning of a new century of podcasts. Is that? It's 100. It's a new 100. That's where we are.
the new 100. Well, I don't like that show. That show sucked. The 100.
Oh, the 100?
It's just terrible. Ugh. Just, I mean, I can bite my tongue and let my wife watch something she's interested in a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times. And like Veronica Mars, I'm sorry. Veronica Mars is a pretty good show, but I just don't enjoy it that much.
Oh, right.
But the 100 is just I just can't stomach it.
I never got through
Don't.
Veronica Mars. Not that it was like a I don't want to thing. It just didn't happen at
Right.
the time. 100, I think I watched the first season and maybe like 4 episodes of the second season, and again just fell
That sounds
off.
about right.
Not because I was hating it, but it just fell off.
I just feel like
the rotation.
I literally can feel my life slipping away as I watch that show.
I had people who were
Just
like really big fans of the 100, so I always figured I'd go
I
back
know.
and check it out at some point.
There's a lot of people who are really big fans of a lot of terrible shows. You know, it's fine. It's just the way they are. So, quick announcement. School ends this week for my children, which means that during the day, no one needs bandwidth. My wife is maybe making phone calls and an occasional, Zoom meeting or, whatever they use. They don't use Zoom. They use something else.
Okay.
So it's just her and me. I can get everybody else off the computer. So we're going back to our daytime. I can. I will literally confiscate every device in this place. I will unhook all the routers except for the one I'm using and disable the Wi-Fi if I have to.
How good are your mobile plans? Do you have lots of data on your mobile plans? So they can use their...
Well, last time I checked, T-Mobile had decided that they were giving unlimited data until the end of this thing, or at some point. They probably have stopped it already, but we get terrible service in our house. So in order to combat that, I have my own T-Mobile hotspot. All I have to do is unplug it, and suddenly no one gets service.
No,
in
I was
the
just
house.
thinking,
so
you keep them off the Wi-Fi, but they can use the mobile if that's still okay.
No, I don't really care about that. So they can read, or they can do yard work. There's plenty of things for them to do around here. So yes, we can go back to our normal daytime stuff. I may have one child who will have to be online during that time, but I've seen what they do, and it doesn't take any bandwidth. So it's just,
where you are, did
know,
your kids ever physically go back to classes, or it's been at home the entire time? Okay.
No,
from
even
place to place, things have been different across countries and states and
That
provinces.
might be countries. I don't know that. I haven't heard any states that kids went back to school that I know of in the United States. But I think Georgia is like, if they're going to do it anywhere, they're going to do it in Georgia, where apparently they just don't care. I had a friend who just talked to today. He's in Kentucky or South, I don't know, one of those places, and he went for like some mountain bike ride, and he ended up in a Mexican restaurant in Georgia somehow. I don't know how that worked out. And not only was nobody wearing masks or anything like that, but there's him and his friends who they're all like quarantined together. They sat at a six-top table, and the entire restaurant was empty. Another six-top comes in, and they see them right next to him. He's like, "Are you guys kidding?" And the other table's like, "No, what? Can't we just sit at this one?" They're like, "No, this is where you have to sit."
Less walking for the server, I guess.
I'm like, he's like, "Yeah, we should just never go there again."
Dear.
And he's not talking about the restaurant; he's talking about the state. So yeah, it's been an interesting day. Oh, and then plumbing woes.
Oh, yes.
As well. So
that still is not complete, I take it, then, by that.
Oh, yeah, that small 2-hour job has turned into 2 people here all day today, and they're coming back tomorrow.
Did they have to go into your kitchen?
They did. The leak is in the kitchen, and while every single professional, and it's been multiples, have come in here and looked at it and said, yes, it has to be under the foundation someplace because of how the leak is working. It's not. It is because of the way that my house was added onto. There's like a pit behind my cabinets in my kitchen, and the leak was filling up the pit and then going out underneath the foundation. You know, so it should have, if there was straight slab there, it should have just run out into the kitchen. But because there was a pit,
additions can often create complications when it comes to jacking things down. That wasn't an addition you did. That was done prior to you.
Oh no. Okay. Oh yeah. I have no idea when this was done. No idea. So no one cares about this. But the reality, the important part is that if you want to catch us live, Tuesdays at 10 a.m.
Okay.
Right? Isn't that when we used to do it?
I can't remember, honestly.
I'm pretty sure Tuesday at 10 a.m.
is what we're aiming for now.
Is what we're gonna do. Okay. Oh no, we'll do it. We'll do 10 a.m. I mean, I can just go around the house with my cricket bat until everybody shuts up, and I will. They'll actually be happy because usually around 10 a.m. is when I start to get cranky and start telling people to mow the lawn, and they're like, "Daddy, it's 90 degrees." I'm like, "That's why I'm not doing it."
Plus, it leaves your afternoon and evening open, and so that's right. Better. All right.
So this is AV Rant, the podcast that doesn't just talk about Tom's schedule, but does answer your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. In fact, the best and preferably only way to get your question answered is by emailing us at question@avrant.com. If you would like to hit us up in other ways, you're welcome to. Your questions may or may not make the question list, depending on how things go. But so if you want to be answered on the podcast, definitely question@avrant.com. But get to this directly, facebook.com/AVRant podcast. You can hit us up there. A lot of times we'll answer you right away or very, very soon. YouTube.com/AVRant. Well, we will not answer you at all because you will not ask a question because we have the comments turned off because YouTube. Rob's direct contact is rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @firstreflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. If you really, really don't want your question answered at all, you should definitely tweet me. That is the number one way for things to go completely and totally unmentioned ever, and I might never see it. So I sometimes swipe right on my Twitter notifications before I read them. I think SVS retweeted me today, and I was like, I think
side by side with that is a comment in the live chat because I don't look at that at all. I have enough.
There's a live chat.
There's a live chat, and I have seen that once in a while people have posted a question in there. I'm like, I'm very sorry, but no one is monitoring the live chat whatsoever. No, so that would be neck and neck with tweeting you.
We would need a producer. If you're interested in becoming a producer for this podcast and are very interested on doing it for goodwill alone, because that's what it would take. Because we have no money to pay you. I've got some speakers I can send you. I guess they're not very good. All the good stuff's already been taken or claimed. But
you can have like 2 old TVs from me that nobody would want.
If you're in Canada, that's what you get. If you're in the States, I'll ship you. For the low price of you pay shipping, a couple of speakers that will be wrapped in bubble wrap and shoved in a box because I threw those boxes out a long time ago. But anyways, I think I did all the contact information. I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is by going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and go to a PayPal donation site where you can use your PayPal account or a credit card to send money directly to us. We want to thank Mike for doing that this week. Thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah, indeed, Mike. Thank you very much for the PayPal donation. Was Mike the one who originally sent the PayPal to a different email address? Is that the same Mike? I think
Yeah,
I think that was a mic.
Somebody sent something to question at avrant.com.
Yeah.
That money is they're never going to take it from you,
Right.
and we're never going to get it. So
Yeah, except you'll have to wait for that money to go back or whatever, or the thing to be canceled.
The eternal limbo of PayPal internet. I don't know. They're probably spending it on cryptocurrency as we speak.
If you want to do if you want to do PayPal, please come to the website and use the support AV Rant link on the website. That is the correct thing to.
That's the only way to do it. That's right. If you don't want to do that, there's also patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. Patreon is a service where you sign up for a continuing subscription or a monthly donation to your content creators of choice, a minimum of $1 a month. And we want to thank our 116, went up 4 from last episode, 116 patrons, including Alvin. If you become a patron and would like us to mention you, please just tell us, because I don't mention the notifications from Patreon are extremely sporadic, guys. I'm going to be honest with you. They're extremely sporadic. And we got 4 new patrons this week. And I think I got 1 email from them. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was this week. Maybe it was last week. So keeping up with all the new patrons is not something I'm okay with. If we had a producer, they could do it.
Well, it's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. If you'd like to sign up, I'm sure it has something to do with a little something we'll be mentioning in just a moment, that the number went up there. But great to see 116 patrons over there. Alvin, thank you for being one of them.
We also thank the people that have sent us notes of gratitude for continuing this podcast even during these trying times. That includes Martin from Denmark, Gurinder, Mike, maybe the same Mike, maybe a different one. Who knows? There are lots of Mikes out there. Alvin, John, Matt, and Fred. So thank you very much.
Indeed. I'll repeat the names: Martin, Gurinder, Mike, Alvin, John, Matt, and Fred. Thank you very much. It's very nice to receive pleasant messages from our listeners. And thank you to everyone who continues to listen. It's wonderful that we get to keep this going.
And we want to thank Andrew as well. Andrew had just recently sent me a model of the Romulan Warper, which I'm very excited about. I did email him and find out that it is in fact wobbly, and it in fact shouldn't be. I think he said whoever designed it was on drugs. Based on his extensive experience with models, which that is not a joke. That is true. He had a YouTube channel dedicated to it. But Andrew has offered to make yet another model of a spaceship from one of his favorite sci-fi series. And we're going to draw a name for that for one of our Patreon supporters. There's a couple of stipulations there. You will have to have been a Patreon supporter in good measure. Good standing. Not one that has a weird thing that says this person's credit card information is not correct. So we will be drawing that next week. Yeah. And once we get that person and we get in contact with them, Andrew will send them a list of models he has available and are willing to do. So that list may be very short or it may be very long, depending. I don't know how he's feeling.
I don't think it'll be very long, but
no, I don't.
It might be very short. It might be 1 or 2, but that is still a list.
That's a list. You could put the same thing on there twice, still be a list. So, regardless, he does amazing work, and you will be happy to have it. So I'm very excited about this. So get on over to patreon.com/AVRant Podcast, sign up, and hopefully you'll win.
And clearly, I think some people did, so that's great. Wonderful.
I think so too. It's very worth it. I mean, doing models is not easy. I mean, I've tried. It's gone horribly awry, so I know. In the news, Samsung is getting into the outdoor TV market because people are running out of places to put TVs in their houses, and they can't leave their houses, so they figure they might as well go outside where they can socially distance and watch the game with their friends. So they're launching the Terrace series of outdoor TVs in 55, 65, and 75-inch sizes. They have solid metal frames and are water and dust resistant, which you'll notice is not the same as being proof.
No, they have an IP55 rating, so
that's pretty good.
Yeah, like modern phones are like an IP68. That's like most phones. So yeah, don't dunk it in your pool. That would be a bad thing.
Don't put it.
But
don't put it under your pergola.
Right.
You want to have something that actually has a roof on it. But they use Samsung's excellent anti-reflective filter on the screen and local dimming with peak output as high as 2,000 nits. They also have a matching water-resistant soundbar that can attach directly to the TV to simplify mounting it. The prices are a bit high, $3,500, $5,000, and $6,500 as you go up in size. So there you go.
Yeah,
I think it's great. I think it's good. I think we need more outdoor options. You know, we just had somebody recently who was like, I want to put this TV outside. How do I do it? don't.
Those are basically in line with the Sunbright prices, because Sunbright was sort of the de facto brand for outdoor TVs. So now we're going to get Samsung in there. I will absolutely vouch for their anti-reflective filter. They've been using that on their highest end, like Q90 has had that, and it is terrific. So putting that on an outdoor TV, it makes all the sense in the world.
Good. Oh, and before we go on, I did just sort of make an announcement of when we were going to change our schedule. That's pursuant to Rob agreeing that he wants to get up at that whatever time that is his time.
That's
my wife was like, "What time is that for Rob?" I'm like, "I don't know, 7 a.m. or
7
something."
a.m.
She's like, "He wants to get up that early?" I'm like, "I don't know."
I typically wake up in the 4 to 4:30 range anyway, so I'm all right.
That's weird, but okay. HBO Max is here. Review.com has a good breakdown, which you might need since there are about 1 million ways to sign up and some offer discounts. The bad news, there's no 4K, there's no HDR, there's no Atmos. A spokesperson did say that 4K and HDR are part of the roadmap. Oh, I love roadmaps. That will roll out in the future. The ability to download shows on the mobile devices is also on that roadmap. No comment about Atmos, though. It isn't available on Roku or Amazon Fire devices yet because war. It's on Android, including Android TV, Apple, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One right now. It's $15 a month. And my Roku Premiere does not do Atmos at all.
Okay.
From any source that I can tell. Yeah. It's not even an option anywhere. Yeah. So it does not do it, which is irksome, but not a deal breaker.
You'll survive.
I will survive this.
Some upmixing for you. But yes,
it's better than having all those surround sounds coming out of the back speakers.
There were definitely people online who were like, I can't get HBO Max on Roku. They were very surprised at that. So again,
I still can't get Twitter on not Twitter. Twitch on Roku. I mean, I don't understand that at all, but whatevs.
In any case, they're working on these things, but they didn't even bother to respond to questions about Atmos. So shows what a priority that is for Warner Brothers. Yeah.
All right, this comes from Sean. He says, after the most recent Xbox One firmware update, if you go into the Dolby Access app, you now have the option to enable Dolby Surround upmixing. I will believe it when I see it, and I fully expect all the sounds to come from over my head and Nothing from the floor level at all.
So I just confirmed moments before we began recording this podcast that this is in fact the case. I hadn't done the most recent 3.8 gigabyte update, so turn that on. That was a fun thing to let go through. And
does it do it if I turn off the Xbox One? Will it do it by itself, or do I have to?
Well, yours is, if it's been on and connected, then it should already be waiting there to just say, okay, do the update. But my son played
on it today. Maybe he did.
I haven't turned my Xbox on since March when the last firmware update came out. So went through that. And then when I went to set it to bitstream output and Dolby Atmos, it told me I had to re-download the Dolby Access app again, which it did the last firmware update. I didn't actually have to download it, but when I launched it, now there is a settings section where it's a little bit hidden because you have to go to settings at the top, and then you have to move over from everything is about headphones. It's all about headphones. But there is another tab beside it, which is for the home theater setup, and that is where you can turn on upmixing. I didn't have a chance to test it, so I don't know what it's doing with that upmixing, but the option most definitely does exist, confirmed. So this way, supposedly, until we can.
So how long before the next Xbox comes out and they might have just possibly fixed the audio?
I wouldn't.
This is the priority.
I wouldn't count. It took them until the end of life of the Xbox One to actually kind of get there, at least in theory.
I will believe it when I hear it.
The idea of this is that now, the front of your AV receiver, it will say Atmos at all times, which is what it used to do. But before they had the upmixing option, it would say Atmos, but if the original signal was 5.1, then only 5 of your speakers would be making any sound, even though your receiver still said Atmos, which meant you couldn't apply an upmixer to it. Now the idea is the upmixing is happening inside of the Xbox, so it will always say Atmos on the front of your AV receiver, and all of your speakers, including your overheads, should be making some sounds. I haven't confirmed whether that is true yet.
I am going to confirm it, right?
All
no,
right.
I'm not. I can't. I will do it tomorrow.
Before
I cannot do
week.
it today.
All right.
Yeah, before next week. if I remember. Some comments from some listeners. Fred did some methodical troubleshooting and discovered why his radio tuner in his Marantz Slimline and R1710 wasn't working. As we suggested last week, he did another factory reset, which got the radio tuner working, and as was the case before. And then he used the web interface to change one setting at a time rather than reloading all of his settings at once from his previous setup. So this is the last time he's like, my radio doesn't work, but I do want to do a factory reset. It does work. We're like, yeah.
That's where you got to start. Yeah.
It is broken. I don't know what you could have done, but it's a broken.
You were a bit stumped on that.
That was a stumped on one. So, okay, it was an Odyssey. He was able to load just the Odyssey configuration without loading all of the other settings, and the radio still worked. And it wasn't the hide input setting, which is what Rob maybe thought it could be, which was the only thing we said we could think of. The culprit ended up being the analog input assign. For some reason, if he reassigned the stereo analog input from his Apple TV 4K to his Oppo Blu-ray player, the radio stops working.
Yup.
What? The Apple TV 4K.
So, like, he had that on input 1 and the Blu-ray player on input 2. He's like, I don't need the analog input for my Apple TV 4K. So I will go into the input assign and assign the analog input to the Blu-ray player instead of the Apple TV 4K, and when he did that, his radio stopped working.
Yeah, so and manually setting it back didn't bring the radio back. He had to press the set defaults button for the input assign settings, and the radio would work again. He reached out to Marantz, and it seems this is simply a bug in the system. Yeah, thanks. We know. Gee, is that what we call it these days? Is that what the kids are calling it? A bug? You guys are just super helpful. He's hoping they might be able to fix it with a firmware update, but for the time being, he's just happy to have figured out what happened. Dude, just use a different input. I don't know.
Well, no, but I mean, just figuring out why, factory reset radio works, something in his settings, radio doesn't work. This is absolutely not the type of thing you could have ever logically figured out, because
this is the sort of thing that would have happened to me when I was reviewing this receiver, because that was the sort of stuff people are like, how did you figure that? I'm like, I don't know, I just started doing stuff and then it doesn't work, and then I figured out this is what it was, and they're like, that's insane. Oh, speaking of which, Patreon didn't pay us this month,
right?
And I sent an email to Patreon saying, dude, what's up? They're like, yeah, it says that it should pay you, but it didn't pay you, we don't know why. Like,
we agree.
Thank you. We agree. You didn't get paid. I'm like, well, I'm glad we're all on the same page. So like, we've sent this up to some of our engineers to figure out what's going on. I'm like,
that would be good.
So so that's it. That's the end of this. We're done. I'm like, yep. Tom broke Patreon. I'm awesome. I'm the best. All right. John shared the audio frequency spectrum chart in which commonly used subjective terms are correlated with the actual frequency range for different instruments and vocal ranges. And you can take this chart and throw it straight in the garbage, because that's not what I've never seen as a reviewer, as a professional at one point reviewer, no one has ever taken me through this. No one has ever talked about any of this. Like, and believe me, hiss, snap, attack, slap, though, no.
Well, I mean, what I just found interesting, because the whole idea is that they talked to basically different engineers and producers and said, like, describe what, like, they would change something in the frequency range of different instruments and different voices and say, okay, how do you describe that? And say, okay, that has more fullness, it has more roundness, it has more bite, it has more pop, whatever it is. And then they actually took that word and they knew what was changed. And so they said, well, here is what we changed when these people said this is, gave this word, this description, this subjective description of what it was that changed. So, I mean, you'll notice if you examine the chart that something like warmth or body or fullness or whatever shows up in multiple different frequency ranges, depending on what instrument they were talking about. So this is definitely subjective. This certainly is not like standardized in any sort of way, but it's an interesting thing to look at because it gives you a little bit of an idea of when some of these words are being talked about, the type of frequency range that it might be applicable to.
Yeah, warmth is all over the place. Yeah. Adds presence is all over
it
the
sure
place.
Is.
It looks like it's from 1K and up, but it like sometimes starts at 1K and sometimes starts at, what is that one? It looks like about 7K. I mean, it's a huge difference. Yeah. Anyway, Mario, So Mario binge watched all of She-Ra on Netflix with his daughter, and they loved it. His daughter made some digital artwork for her phone's lock screen. Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah, I just like to show that off. That's all, because I talked about it.
Send that.
I enjoy it.
Send it. Send it to me.
Send the artwork?
Send it to us.
All
I
right,
do. I want to see. I want it. I will not guarantee I'll put it on my phone, but I guarantee I will put it on my kid's phone, not tell them how to take it off.
Nice.
So
it is cute. It is fun. I enjoy sharing that.
I started watching a review of She-Ra or a talk about She-Ra, and they're like, "There's spoilers." I'm like, "Nope." I haven't.
There will be big spoilers. It's pretty hard to not talk about the ending if you've seen the ending. So
right.
Yeah.
I will watch it. I not had a chance yet, but it is definitely on my short list. Well,
DJ from the Brightside Home Theater podcast, he's like, "Hey, I just talked to Tom. Rob, would you like to come onto my podcast and talk about something?" I'm like, "Well, I talk about She-Ra." He's like, "Yeah, we can do that." So that might be happening towards the end of June.
Good. Well, I said we should have both of us on there, but at some point. But I don't think he'll get a word in, which will be a problem. So maybe it's better if he has us one at a time. I could talk about She-Ra too. I really like She-Ra, what I've seen so far. I haven't finished the third season or something.
Okay.
All right. We're going to just take one short little thing while I check the AC and turn it down because I'm roasting in this room.
Is it actually working? Are you actually able to connect to your Ecobee again?
Yeah, it comes and goes.
It comes and goes. Wonderful.
All right, Brian on Twitter. Here's our questions here. Brian got a Panasonic UB420 Ultra HD Blu-ray player to use with his JVC NX7 projector. He's noticing more film grain, especially when he compared The Rise of Skywalker on disc versus on streaming. He didn't notice the additional grain when watching the disc on a 65-inch Vizio. It's just a result of less compression on the disc. The streaming version actually seems to look a bit sharper because of it. What do we think? What disc is he watching the 4K disc?
Yeah, Ultra HD Blu-ray. I mean,
right?
Yeah, he got the UB420, so I'm assuming he's talking about the rather recently released Ultra HD Blu-rays of Star Wars. Now, should mention right away, The Rise of Skywalker was actually shot on 35mm film, because as J.J. Abrams and the ones that he did, the episode 7 and episode 9, right? Yeah, he actually shot those on film. So film grain in this case is genuine. It isn't just some digital effect being applied afterward. So, I mean, part of it is definitely just that with the greater amount of bandwidth on the physical disc, and they are not filtering out that film grain on the physical disc, that you are getting the genuine film grain on the disc version. How much of that reduction of film grain in the streaming version is due to just the lower bandwidth, and how much is due to, like, Disney does all kinds of stuff on Disney Plus to their movies on there. They do all kinds of processing to the streamed versions. So I do believe this is more or less just a case of the disc version. J.J. Abrams was involved with that. His cinematographer was involved with that. That has the look that they were going for, more or less. And having been shot on actual film, that film grain should be there. And you're likely seeing it much more on your projector versus your 65-inch Vizio, simply by sheer virtue of size.
Right. On top of that, too, and I believe that our listeners would have their settings all correct, but any sort of edge enhancement setting that you put on here may contribute to an accentuation of this. Shouldn't, but it might.
Similarly, reduction can happen, like if you have any sort of noise reduction on, mosquito noise reduction, ambient noise reduction turned on, which tends to be the default in flat panels. So if you haven't actively turned that off, that might be active. And any sort of contouring filter can also have an impact on this as well. And again, flat panels often have that on by default. So, I mean, the thing is, so nobody's under any obligation to prefer grain or not grain, but in terms of what did the original image genuinely look like, in this case, there would have been film grain. Right.
All right, Neil in the UK. Neil is back to further discuss his finished attic home theater and has struggled to decide which second subwoofer to get. The room is enclosed. This is the guy who wanted the big one, right? And we told him to get a small one?
Yeah, he had like an SB2000. Yeah. He was like, should I get a PB2000 or maybe like an SB 4,000, I think was like the thing.
Something like
and we're
that.
Like, just get a second SB2000, or if you can't find one since that's been discontinued, an SB2000 Pro.
Right. His room is enclosed roughly 17.5 by 12 by 7 with the wall slanting in for the A-frame. The two doors, one to an ensuite and the other into the rest of the house, are at the two rear corners. Blah, 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 blah. Scrolling down past
So
a whole
this
bunch
is
of pictures.
enclosed, and it is
Yes.
certainly not a large room by no means.
No.
It is looking
It's
like
got
it's
got a love seat. It's what it's got.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a love seat, and it fits nicely in here. But you would have a hard time getting one more chair next to it, I think, and not blocking
some
the
of the
door.
images look like they maybe have some fisheye distortion a little bit. So the room actually
It
is
does.
longer than it is wide. You can
Yes.
see in the final image there. But yeah, enclosed space, not large. That's what we're dealing with.
So, like Rob said, he's got an SB2000. We said to get a second one or a Pro to match, but he can't get it out of his head that he might regret not getting more. The PB2000 Pro is definitely too big, but the PC2000 Pro cylinder could just squeak in. There's no design that SB2000 will be less expensive and easier to fit. He does not intend to move to a larger space anytime soon. Can they truly satisfy, or will he always be left wondering what if? He's willing to sell his SB2000, get dual PC2000 Pros if it would be worth it. It's not. I mean, you will go lower. That is beyond a doubt. That will.
Well, will you really? like in terms of if what you're aiming for is flat frequency response in a room
Right.
this size, if you're looking for tipped up response, then perhaps like there is more headroom down at 20 hertz from a PC 2000 Pro than from an SB 2000. But unless you're tipping it up, you don't really need it.
It doesn't need. I mean, it should go a couple of hertz lower, though, right? The rated response is like 17, right? With those 18.
Yeah,
right?
It's like 17 or 18. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
guess
and
what
the
the
other
SB
ones are-
2000 was -3 at 19. But then it's the shallower slope on the SB. So you're going to have room gain in a room this size that's enclosed. Yeah. I mean, look, the objective answer is you don't need a PC 2000 Pro dual setup in this room size with it being enclosed. You don't need it.
Let's put it this way: if we could put you in your room and blindfold you and instantaneously switch between two PC, 2000 Pros or two SB 2000s, you would not be able to tell the difference.
Yeah,
I 100% guarantee
unless you purposely want to exaggerate the really low bass, which the PC 2000 Pro will be able to provide more output down there, but you don't need it if your goal is flat frequency response at reference volume.
Yes. So he also can't get it out of his head that the down-firing cylinders cannot possibly be identical in terms of how much sound will get transmitted downstairs as front-firing subs. I understand why you're saying this because of where the driver is pointing, but it's. Can you just take our word for it? I mean, because it's just the case. It is just the case. Let's put it this way: you take your SB2000 or SB2000 Pros, and you put them on a hard surface with hard feet. Like you take the feet off and you put them on there, or you use spikes. God help you. And then you take the PC 2000 cylinders and you put them on the
squishy
sound path
feet.
isolation feet that come with it. These days, right? Don't they come with it?
Yeah, the cylinders come with the sound path isolation feet. The box subs do not. You'd have to add those on as an additional expense.
You would see less transmission of sound downstairs with the cylinder and the squishy feet than with the box firing forward and the hard feet.
Yeah.
You would 100%.
Yeah.
It would be not subtle.
Yeah, because it's the
least.
structural transference of vibration is what's really going to let you hear the bass throughout the entire rest of your house, and that's what the squishy feet help to reduce. As far as like the air movement, right? I mean, remember the driver is moving back and forth at 20 hertz. It's moving back and forth 20 times a second, so that's still relatively quickly, right? It's still moving back and forth. So the air is vibrating and it's coming out in a spherical shape. So whether that starts by shooting up, forward, back, side, down, it really does not impact the movement of the air throughout the room as a whole.
Yeah, and if you've ever been to a school dance, any place where there's a DJ and you've tried to get away from all that sound, and by going around to the back of the speaker, so you could talk to somebody, you notice the difference in treble when you get back there,
definitely.
but you do not notice at all the difference in bass. And not only that, many and almost every DJ I've ever worked or ever talked to has said at one point or another, the bass is usually better behind the sub, behind the speaker than it is in front of the speaker.
That's probably
what
because
they've always told me.
Behind the speaker of the sub is probably a wall is closer to it, so you're actually just getting boundary reinforcement from the wall. That's right.
So, but that's what, I mean, think of it that way. Think of it that way. But what Rob is saying is right. It's a sphere. But anyways, let me keep going here. So if they go in diagonally opposite corners, one will be close to a door. Won't more sound go under the door if the sub is firing straight down at the floor? And if he separates his side wall shelves so that the subs can go in midpoints of the two side walls, there are HVAC registers there. Won't down-firing subs force more sound into those registers? Neither of those things are true because of the thing we just said. And you don't have to worry about it because you're going to go get another SB2000 Pro.
Yep.
So that's why you don't have to worry about this. Look at this. We're solving your problems. All your worries are taken care of just by doing the thing we told you to do.
If you have to picture a bubble of air, it's a bubble of air that's doing this, and then the wave is transmitting out.
What's this? Is it going like this? I can't. I mean, what is this? He can't see necessarily.
Well,
so
okay, yes, it is vibrating. It is a vibrating thing, but then there is a propagation of a wave throughout all the air in your room. But the air itself is, the little molecules are just vibrating where they are, back and forth in a spherical shape. So it doesn't matter, if you put a sub over on top of a register, it doesn't really matter which way the driver is facing. The air is going to be moving to that register no matter what.
Your analogy of dropping a pebble in the water is a perfect example too, though. But think of it this way: if you throw a pebble up, and it has an arc, but it has a forward momentum, when it hits the water, is there more waves going forward or backwards? When you look at it, it still goes out in a circle, a perfect circle. And this is what's happening here. Doesn't matter where the origin point is, the sound wraps around the side of the speakers. So, did I answer that? Oh, here we go. He tried using his existing RUARC logarithm sub along with the SB2000 just to try out dual sub placement. And according to Odyssey, diagonally opposite corners resulted in a pretty big dip around 100 hertz and some fairly noticeable squiggles below that. But mid-wall placement on both side walls only had a hump around 70 hertz, and the correction seemed to have easy time of turning that into a flat line. So would it be worth going for that placement? Well, once you get your second SB2000, you should try them both again. That's what I say. Because a RUARC, who knows what it's doing, how flat it is.
Although I should be able to do 70 and 80 hertz. That
one would think
that
it should be able to
do 70 and 80 hertz. And this is not shocking. That type of result is not shocking because we would expect that the midpoints of walls will get you the most uniform bass, whereas diagonally opposite corners are like your second best choice. And often the easiest in terms of just physical placement. But if you have the opportunity to put subs at the midpoints of walls, and his room, while it is not rectangular because of the angled ceiling part, the rest of the room is more or less rectangular. So,
or it's mirrored. So it's the side walls makes perfect sense to me. If you can put them there, that's what I would put them to. All right, so we'll talk to you next week when you tell us why you still need cylinder subs.
I'll bet he still gets cylinders.
But don't want to place them next to the door. Okay, whatever. Buy what you want, man. If you're looking for our blessing, we love subs. Buy what you want.
Both of us have big cylinder subs that are bigger than when we need for our actual rooms.
You shut your mouth. I could use a bigger sub. I'm telling you, man. I just never. I barely have these things on at all. It's ridiculous. It was so good when we were watching what were we watching? Captain Marvel we were watching, and I have been goosing the volume up, trying to get a little bit closer to the reference volume, and everybody's starting to get used to it. Nobody's complaining anymore. But we had Captain Marvel in here, and there was like a scene I could feel like everything, like all of me shake. I was like, oh, so good. But that doesn't happen when you're at negative 20 because you want to have a conversation with somebody. But when you're at negative 5 and you're like eaching it up towards negative 3, it feels pretty awesome. All right, Rob in Australia. Hey, Rob, how's Australia?
It's a different last name, so not me.
I know. I was talking to him, not you.
Okay.
Rob has completed a bunch of upgrades. He's painted this room. He kept having issues trying to make his 4K TV and his 1080p projector work together. So we got a 4K BenQ, and the upgrade is Marantz SR6010 to a Denon 3600H. He loves it. So good.
Yeah.
Hey, see you later. Oh, but There's more here. But he had more bumps along the way. He had been powering his top rear speakers with a 2-channel Rotel that started buzzing in the left, and then the left channel died. So he got a 5-channel Rotel to replace it. Apparently, they sell a lot of Rotels over there in Australia. And that also let him expand to a full 7.2.4 configuration, since he had a spare pair of B&W M1 satellites on hand, which are now his surround backs. But when he hooked it all up, he discovered that this his left top rear speaker now had a blown tweeter, probably when the old amp went. It's certainly possible. His in-ceiling speakers are Cambridge models that you can't find anymore, so he upgraded one pair to B&W in-ceilings, and they have a wider dispersion, much better build quality, and sound better. Sure they do. This is a blue room. It's very nice.
It is.
Oh, the hardwood floors are gorgeous. Really nice.
He's got subs on either side of his room. That's where his subs live.
I like it. Pull down screen, or I think pull down.
I mean, certainly retractable. I don't see a little loop, so I think it's motorized.
Yeah, it could be. I can't really see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very nice. So he asked, should he buy another pair of B&W in-ceiling speakers and replace his remaining pair of Cambridge in-ceilings? He would finally have perfectly matching B&W speakers all around. It sounds to me like you want us to say yes. So I will say yes, and with the caveat that no.
I mean, it is certainly not a no money replacement.
Not only that, but it is a not noticeable, probably, replacement. I mean, I think it'll be noticeable between ears, but not. I think this is more of a, I want all my speakers to be the same. And Rob will tell you that that's a real thing that people worry about.
And so he did notice the upgrade in the one pair. I mean, at least he tells us so.
He tells us so. I don't know.
So I mean,
I don't know if I believe what he said, but that's fine.
Both of us will tell you. I mean, if we're talking about if money is tight, where should money be spent? We would not be telling you to upgrade a pair of Atmos speakers. But
no,
if the money is not a big issue, and this is something that you want to do, you can answer that. You heard what the difference going from the Cambridge to these B&W in-ceilings was. Do you want that in all 4 of the above ones? I will tell you that it is perfectly okay as long as you are not stressing your budget in any way. If you're stressing your budget, don't do it, because it's not going to be a big upgrade.
I mean, I went from the Focal birds to the prime satellites, prime elevations overheads, and I'm like, the difference was, I can't tell. I couldn't tell you what speaker was up there. They all make noise, but I could not tell the difference between the two.
It's not like birds
are
slouches or something either. So
I'm not saying that. I mean, maybe the Cambridge Audio really are terrible speakers, which could be the case, but I doubt it. And whatever. So if you want to do it, do it. So he says, should he buy another pair of B&W in-ceiling speakers and replace his? I already said that one. He actually feels like he's getting a lot from having surround backs, but now he wonders if it means his top rear should be moved closer to his seat and farther away from the surround backs. It would be a big hassle. Would it be worth it? Well, no, how close are they?
So if you see in the images, I mean, they're almost directly above, because his surround backs are on stands. So they're not completely on the back.
I can't find the picture.
They're sort of a sideways facing one where you can, looking from the left of the couch to the right. Yeah, so they're basically directly above. His top rears are.
They are at least 5 feet apart from each other. I mean, physically, like distant wise, and the angles are significantly different.
Yeah, I mean the surround backs are.
I would not.
Yeah, they're more or less firing straight forward. Are his surround backs, which is great, and then his top rears are firing straight down. So to me, that is sufficient separation. That is not a case where, say, your surround backs are like practically on the ceiling but just way up high on the back wall or something like that. That might be sounding too redundant, but with their current placement, they're separated enough that you should be able to tell one is directly behind me, the other one is above me and behind me, and if it's going to be a hassle, I wouldn't move them.
So he has a Fetch TV cable box, and it just got a firmware update. Now, Netflix shows HDR and Dolby Atmos from that box. But when he watches Netflix on the NVIDIA Shield, it never says Atmos, just Dolby Digital Plus. Any ideas? So I have no idea about your cable box, but I will tell you that in the Netflix app, you do have to go into the audio settings within the show you're watching. And sometimes it will default to some like I don't remember. I think on the Xbox One there was like a an English,
Yeah.
and then it'll say English original
That's right.
soundtrack or something like that. And the original soundtrack was the one that would give me Atmos, and just the English one.
Yeah,
would
that's
not.
while the program is actually in progress. You bring up
In progress,
the little
yes.
menu for audio and subtitles, and you can change. That could be it. I don't know what the situation with Australia's versions of the Netflix app are. It's not impossible that the Australian version that works on Android TV or just the NVIDIA Shield version that they have for some reason isn't supporting Atmos. I'm not going to put that out of the realm of possibility, because when it comes from app to app, sometimes that's just the way it is, and region to region, it's that way. So, I mean, at least you must be paying for the tier of Netflix that gets you 4K HDR and Atmos, because it worked on your Fetch TV box. So that's not the issue. You know that it's working there, so clearly it's available in Australia. Why specifically on the NVIDIA Shield? If it isn't just that setting, I mean, of course you can double check the NVIDIA Shield's settings, but its audio settings are really very straightforward. I mean, there's basically auto or manually select what you want, and that's it. So auto should do it. So as long as that's it, the only other guess, if none of that fixes it, is that it's specifically the Australian version of the app on Android TV for some reason doesn't support it.
Could be. All right. Matt was thinking it might be fun to have an outdoor movie night. Hey, Samsung's making some new TVs for outdoor stuff. He has a 4K BenQ HT3550 projector, and he has a spare projector screen that he was thinking he could just tape up onto his garage door. Sure.
That's going to be some strong tape, man. But projector screens aren't that lightweight, but I guess it's doable.
Should he put some kind of breathable fabric or screen material over the vents of his projector to make sure no bugs get inside? I mean, there's a filter in there that should stop bugs from
and this
getting
being a DLP, at least the light path itself is sealed. So it's not like an LCD where it's possible for dust or whatever to get into the light path. That part is sealed. There is a filter on the air intake. The air exhaust should be blowing out hard enough that things aren't going to get inside it. So
that way, I mean, they're not going to be attracted to the vents. As much as they're going to be attracted to the light.
Right.
So,
but sometimes a little bit of light is leaking out of that vent on some projectors.
But compared to the 1,000 lumens that are coming out of the front, I don't know that's going to. They're going to go, oh, but look at this little.
What if you just took a little patch of screen door material and put it over the intake vent?
That would be fine. That's about as close as I would. I would not go breathable fabric. Even breathable fabric, even like speaker cloth, I would be a little hesitant to put across this thing just for the heat factor, and I wouldn't want to restrict any airflow. And screen door material should be fine. I would be okay with that.
Maybe even just like make a little cage for it. It goes in there.
Sure. I don't know how you're gonna. I guess the light goes through the cage too, so now we get this. We actually get the screen door effect.
that's a real screen door effect.
Screen door. So should he put the projector in high altitude mode? Are you at high altitude?
Right.
Because I don't think that just taking it outside makes it, because it's high altitude mode is about air pressure.
Yes.
It's about how as you go higher, the air pressure is lower, and therefore it affects how like water boils and a bunch of other stuff. So high altitude mode is about that. And unless the air pressure inside your house is significantly different than the air pressure outside your house, which seems highly unlikely, whatever the setting is inside your house is the setting you have.
I guess maybe he lives somewhere where it's very, very hot right now, so inside is air conditioned, and he was thinking maybe the fan should be on a higher speed because outside is hotter. But you're right. It's about the air pressure, not so much about just the sheer temperature. If it starts to heat up, it will kick the fan into a higher speed anyway. So that unless,
and if it gets too hot, you'll know because it'll kick itself off.
if you are living in a high altitude city, then that would be the reason to do it. But that would be the same.
By all means,
that would be the same inside as well as outside. So there'd be no difference.
So he's looking into installing a deck. What outdoor speakers do we recommend? What speaker wire? What amplifier to drive them? And should he have an outdoor subwoofer? I don't suggest any of those things, but everybody knows this by now. The outdoor speakers I like are the Yamaha ones that we always recommend.
Yamaha's all-weather speakers in general. We never have a problem with them. They're easy to drive. They are nice and weather-resistant, a good design. They sound good. And if you want a lot more bass, go for the nice big 8-inch model. We tend to usually go for the 6.5er, but they have an 8-inch model. Go for that. And we don't go for outdoor subs.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't. You would have to, in order for me to justify you having an outdoor sub, your sub would have to be like the size of a septic system.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It'd have to be this big septic tank making, with a folded horn inside of it, creating crazy bass and then no one's going to live near you, which maybe is the point. So I would just get the speakers and stop there. Honestly, I'll give you the same advice I gave my brother-in-law. It's not worth it.
Just
the
get
number
a
of
Bluetooth
times you're going
speaker.
just get a Bluetooth speaker set on the table with all your friends or off to the side, and it provides that music that you want. Nobody cares if they're getting it in stereo. No one cares.
I will also say, if you see, I don't know, like when it comes to what amplifier should you get, I'm assuming that maybe you want to connect it to some kind of whole house audio situation where the same music is playing inside and outside. Now, I don't know what you have, or maybe you're starting from scratch. Obviously, Sonos is very popular here, and they have their Sonos Move now, which is their outdoor speaker. Not only is it outdoor rated, it's also can be battery powered, so it's truly portable. So that could be a very good choice if you want to get into Sonos. Then you wouldn't need anything separate. You wouldn't need any wires. You wouldn't need any amplification. It's all built into that Sonos Move. But you might also be going Yamaha Music Cast. Well, it's Yamaha. You can connect all-weather speakers there, including you could get, say, their Music Cast amplifier, which will allow you to connect it to the rest of the whole house system. Personally, I'd probably go for one of those two systems.
You could go DTS Playfi.
You could go DTS Playfi. You could go Denon Hios, of course. That's available as well. So in terms of what amplifier to power these speakers and potentially which speaker to get, I would sort of look at, do you want to do a whole house system and get the one that works with that system? Because then it's kind of self-evident which one you're going to get.
Right.
As far as speaker wire, if you do end up using a system that uses speaker wire, it is worth getting proper outdoor speaker wire. I don't know if these speakers are being attached to your house or exterior where a wire run will have to go. Well, just go to Parts Express. Belden has their Brilliance speaker wire, which is burial and outdoor rated. So, and it's not expensive. So Belden Brilliance at Parts Express is the speaker wire to use.
All right. Is there an outdoor equipment box we would recommend for housing the outdoor audio equipment? Is he now suggesting that he's going to have like a CD player or something out here and a receiver and all that stuff?
I wasn't entirely sure from his email because
I would drill a hole in your wall and run the speaker wire out to it.
Exactly.
And then put all the equipment inside.
Yes.
I mean, even if it's just by the back door so that you have easy access to it, I would not build a box to put. I mean, that could literally cost more than everything else you're talking about.
Yeah, I would.
Because you have to enclose it, you have to AC it, you have to do all these things.
I wouldn't have anything besides the speakers themselves actually outdoors. Like I said, I mean, I'm almost in favor of just saying, just get a one or two Sonos Moves and go Sonos if you're starting, because that is the simplest by far. Then you got nothing to install. Right. You just take the speaker out there when you want it, and it is a Bluetooth speaker too. So even if you just want to send something directly from your phone to it, that also works. It really is a convenient little device. But yeah, if this is going to be a wired setup, then have your equipment inside and just have the speaker wire run inside.
So we'd like to be able to have a TV out on the deck as well, but he isn't looking for a permanent installation. He'd prefer to be able to only take the TV outside when he wants it and then bring it back in when he's done. So he'd like a wall mount that would make it that as easy as possible. And would it be okay to leave that wall mount outside all the time? I'm sure such a thing exists.
Absolutely.
I just don't know. I just can't picture in my mind what you're going to do with the TV when it's not outside. You know what I mean?
It depends on how big it is. It doesn't have to be.
Well, I honestly, I was thinking about like those Amazon screen thingies, whatever they call them. That you could stream stuff on those boxes, right? Whatever the Fire thingy is,
sure.
And that to me makes more sense than doing this. Just taking it outside with a little screen. You're all sitting there watching this small screen, because if you're going to get a small screen and do this whole thing, then at least make it so that it's always portable. You're not having like literally dangling wires. That's what it's going to be. You have to unplug everything from the back of the TV. Then you have to take it all in, and then there'd just be this open hole in your wall. I mean, with a TV mount on top of it, with wires hanging out, just kind of dangling out there. That's what it would look like when you weren't doing it, when you weren't using it.
I mean, they do have outdoor covers. Like the link I'm going to provide is actually to just Best Buy's outdoor TV accessory section, because they have sort of everything you need. So I mean, one option is to just have a cover, because they just have outdoor covers that sort of like a vinyl cover that just zips up and covers everything. As far as the mount itself, so Sanus does have outdoor rated ones, but they're very expensive. So Sunbright, which we mentioned before, they have outdoor mounts. And as long as you're not going for their articulating one, so their articulating one as it is about $100 less than Sanus's, even though it's still about $350, the Sunbright one. But if you just need a regular wall mount that isn't the fully extending articulating type, it's quite reasonable. It's like $170 or something like that, the Sunbright one, and then it's fully outdoor rated. It's rated to just be outside all year long. That's what Sunbright does. Yeah. So that's pretty reasonable. So the combination of a Sunbright mount and perhaps a cover should be able to let you do this.
All right, let us know what you decide to do. I've seen people with outdoor setups, and that use them all the time, and I've seen people with outdoor setups that do nothing but rust. So let us know. Daniel, this is the guy who sent me a Roku, which I have been using and has been working pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. And plus, I get to now talk about it whenever somebody asks a question.
About Roku.
Go actually look at it. Yeah. So Daniel's Marantz SR6011 receiver's volume knob was acting up a bit, so he used that as an excuse to get a new SR7013. Okay.
Yep, that's done. He's not asking what to buy or permission.
Nope, no permission needed. He figured he would use the 6011 as a dumb amplifier and expand to a full 7.2.4 configuration. He set all the speakers to large, turned off all EQ and processing, locked the input into the 7.1 channel analog input, and set the master volume to 0. Then he disabled the remote control sensor via the remote lock function so that 6011 doesn't change any settings or its volume when he uses the remote for a 7013. The issue is that he wants the 6011 to go into standby and power back on along with his SR7013. He can set an auto standby timer so that the SR6011 powers down on its own, but it doesn't power back on unless he physically pushes the power button on the front. Does the analog audio signal not trigger the 6011 to power on? Is there any way to get this working? So the one way that I know that this works, that you can get this to work like pretty, consistently, is to use one of the slave outlets for like will that work for like an APC?
When it powers down, I don't think it turns back on in an on state.
Right. It's going to go into standby.
Yeah, it's not like a computer where you have the option to say if the power goes out.
So does he have the 12-volt triggers hooked up here or not?
But see, the 12-volt triggers are out. I don't recall ever a 12-volt trigger in on a AV receiver, like a Marantz AV receiver. It's a 12-volt trigger out. So you
have kids. So if you have kids, then you say, "Hey, go press that button."
There's that.
That's the one.
So to answer directly, the analog audio signal is not sufficient to have the SR6011 turn on. That isn't a feature where it senses. It's not like a subwoofer where you have the option of auto sensing to the analog input signal. Your receiver doesn't have that, so that alone isn't going to do this. What are the options here? One, if you have a Harmony setup, you could get like the precision IR little cables and set it so that only, the one output is only to the 6011 and the other output is only to the 7013, and then you could set this in your Harmony activities. So that's one way. You could definitely do this.
Right.
You'd be turning the IR sensor on your 6011 back on, but you would make sure that it's only receiving from the precision IR little blaster thing that sticks right to it in the Harmony system. So that's one way you could do it. I'm thinking, like, it's still going to require you to press something, but at least you don't have to physically walk over to it, which is you should be able to do this with the app. right? You should be able to have your 6011 connected to your network and then power it on via the Denon Control app.
I think the Harmony is the best solution here.
That's the slickest. That's the I press one button and everything turns on.
Yeah.
But if the issue is I have to physically go do it and you're okay with I can do this from my chair, it still requires additional button presses, but from my seat. If that's the issue, then you should be able to do this with the app, just powering it on. Otherwise, yeah, I'd say get some of those little precision IR attachments for your Harmony.
All right. Matt. I guess this is a different Matt.
We had a Matt C before, and this is also a Matt C, but a different Matt C. So.
All right. Matt C's. They're all over here. Matt says he's only recently gotten into home theater, but he's put together a 5.1.4 system in his living room and has been using an Apple TV 4K. He is debating whether to get an Ultra HD Blu-ray player and whether to start buying Ultra HD Blu-ray discs. He's considering just sticking with 1080p's, regular Blu-rays, or maybe just buying movies from iTunes. In general, standard Blu-rays are the cheapest, especially if it's an older movie. iTunes is next in terms of price, but they offer quite a few movies in 4K HDR with Atmos, and they don't charge extra for that. And then Ultra HD Blu-rays tend to be the most expensive. So what's the most worthwhile? He's more or less felt that iTunes movies in 4K look about on par with 1080p Blu-rays, but the sound seems to be a bit better with physical discs. Are Ultra HD Blu-rays a noticeable upgrade on both, enough to justify the higher price of each disc? He's only recently gotten into it. Does he have a 4K display? I missed that when I was reading this. I don't see that. He's got an Apple TV 4K.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he does. Yeah, I don't recall exactly in the email, but I'm pretty sure that he does.
I mean, even if you had like the highest possible streaming bandwidth possible, the disc still measurably has better fidelity, audio and video than you can get from an Apple TV 4K. That's inarguably the truth.
Yeah.
So is it worth it? Well, I don't know. Is it? Because I mean, for me, like I'm still rocking a 1080p projector in here, and probably will be for quite some time, which is fine. But I'm buying Ultra HD Blu-rays for two reasons, and these are my reasons, and they may or may not convince you. So my number one reason is that I am interested in the sound. I want to make sure I get the best sound. Now, sometimes I can get the best sound, or at least the Atmos sound on a Blu-ray, and that will sometimes sway my decision to buy a Blu-ray rather than an Ultra HD Blu-ray. But more importantly is that I want a physical disc. I've seen too many times in this industry where your online purchase suddenly becomes gone. And we see, like, with Vudu getting sold recently, or maybe is it gotten sold? I don't remember.
It's sold now. Comcast owns it now.
So and while iTunes, it doesn't seem like Apple's going to go anywhere anytime soon. Apple is notorious for like going, hey, we've made a change and now all of this is terrible, and you're stuck. You're stuck. So and you have no way of getting your content back. So I want to have a physical disc because no matter what happens, I still can watch this.
Yeah.
I can still watch it somehow. It may not be 4K because I don't have a 4K display. It may not be in Atmos because I don't have an Atmos setup. But I know that I can still watch it no matter what. And that's why I buy discs. Whether or not I buy Blu-ray or Ultra HD Blu-ray depends on the sound and other things.
Right.
But I agree with you. Ultra HD Blu-rays are way too expensive.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I've sort of fallen to, I will buy the Ultra HD Blu-ray if it's a movie I know I really, really want to have in my collection. And that's going to be the best that's available. Although, like, with the recent release of War of the Worlds, they sort of messed up the audio on the Ultra HD Blu-ray release. So the Blu-ray actually sounds better, the original Blu-ray. But that was a technical error that happened there. I don't know what.
Well, then Thor Ragnarok is infamous for its terrible. Bass? No, I'm sorry. We were all out of bass for this movie.
Yeah.
We used it all up in the.
And
Avengers.
that's kind of the same thing that's happened on War of the Worlds. There's nothing below 30 hertz in the Ultra HD Blu-ray version. Somehow some filter got applied and nobody noticed over there. So this can occasionally happen, but that is the exception to the rule. By and large, you are getting better. Now, I mean, on a good 4K HDR display, you can certainly see the difference. You know, it's not as big as the difference that we got when we went from, say, VHS to DVD. To me, that's still probably the biggest difference that we've had.
Right.
But
oh God, yes,
it is an appreciable difference. It's there. But like I say, to me, it's really only worth the price for movies that I really, really know I want to have in my collection and hold on to. If I'm renting something, if it's a movie that is kind of cheap on iTunes, like, I'm willing to do that for movies that I don't care that much about, but, I'd still like to watch it, or I'd still like to have access to it. Then that makes sense to me, because, there's a lot of movies where maybe I just want to watch it once. Yeah, I'm not going to buy the Ultra HD Blu-ray for that. I'll just go rent it on iTunes. That's fine by me. Or maybe it's a movie that I think, I'd like to have it in my collection, but I don't care that much about it, and I'll buy the iTunes version, because to me, that's fine. And if it goes away, oh well, I didn't really care that much anyway. That's kind of how I break it down. But I think you can make the case for Ultra HD Blu-rays.
Yeah. Aris. Aris. How have we decided?
He's never come back. He's written to us multiple times. He's never said what the pronunciation should be. I'm going to continue saying Aris. I think that's what that looks like.
We should call it something else, just so he's forced to something offensive. He's forced to Aris the Destroyer. No, now he was going to like that. Now it's cool. Last week, Tom and Rob, that's us. Mm-hmm. Wow. Discussed ballpark figures for fully soundproofing a medium-sized room. He wasn't put off at all, and he greatly appreciates that we tried to be realistic. We weren't out of line with what he thought he might hear.
Oh, I should just mention, somebody wrote, like, just today, so normally I don't put anything in on that came in before something, but they were just saying to do their room was about $12,000. So I said something like 8 to 10, and they said their room to soundproof it ended up being about 12,000. So something in there, Aris, that's what you're looking at.
But the week before, Lee and Rob discussed his question about amplifiers for his 7.1.4 system, in which he has replaced his front 3 clip speakers with KEF reference, and he couldn't help himself but be drawn to Macintosh amplifiers, including a monoblock for a center because of their pleasing appearance and all those blue VU meters and the audiophile reputation and blah, blah, blah. But he was also considering Parasound or Bryson, with the plan of being to buy used to keep the price reasonable. None of what you need, but here we go. Rob ultimately said that if he were recommending a brand new amplifier for Aris, it would be a monoprice monolith 3X or 5X. He wouldn't limit the selection to only 2-channel models and a monoblock, but if the price of a used Macintosh, Parasound, or Bryson were lower, by all means go for it, because any of them will power his KEF reference speakers perfectly. Aris assumes Tom would mostly agree, but yeah. Except Tom doesn't think you need amplifiers at all. I mean, are you sitting like 25 feet away from these things?
Nope, because he's 12 feet away.
So you don't need them. You don't need any of this. You have too much amplification to begin with, and buying more is something I do not agree with. I do not. This argument does not hold water with me, sir. I am sorry. But if Tom has anything to add or contradict, you would like to hear it. All right. Well, you heard it. And just to clarify some of the things we weren't sure about, he's currently sitting with 12 feet from his front speaker. He does have a cheap audio source 2-channel amp plus the 9 amps built into his stand. So strictly speaking, he doesn't need a new amp to make his 11-speaker setup function. But the audio source has started cutting in and out, particularly when his volume dial is moved. Don't move it. And so he'd be happy to replace it. And he mostly wanted the monoblock for aesthetic reasons. So what do I say? I say you don't need amplifiers. You don't need them. Yeah,
the KEF reference are not difficult to drive speakers, and 12 feet away. I in my mind, I had a picture of Aris's room from way back, and I thought he was like 15 to 18 feet away, but he's like, no, I'm 12 feet away. I'm like, yeah, you don't need any of this. It's unnecessary. Yes. In fact, now,
completely unnecessary.
My recommendation to you, because I'm still okay with having a nice amplifier. You have to have at least a 2-channel amplifier to make your 11-speaker setup work. Your audio source, you're saying you're having a few little issues with it, so that's fine. I would now downgrade from my monolith suggestion to an Outlaw Audio 5-channel amp, the Model 5000. It is considerably less expensive and has all the power you need. I still like the idea of just having a multi-channel amp. But I mean, yeah, he was like, oh, I can have a 2-channel on this side and a monoblock on this side. I'm like, oh, that's unnecessary. But does Tom agree or disagree? He wants to hear Tom.
I agree. It's completely unnecessary. You shouldn't buy any of this. You should stop touching the volume knob on your audio source amp. You should leave it at full or whatever, because that's where mine is. Mine's jacked all the way up. You leave it there, you never touch it again. Take the knob off if it's that distracting to you.
There you go.
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. People want to spend money. And I got no problems with you buying pretty amplifiers and setting them up there, and that's fine. If you say, "But I want it because it's pretty," fine, buy it. It's pretty. People buy pretty things all the
I think
time
that's actually
that
his
I
whole
think
last
are
question.
worthless. You know, they buy art, and I look at them like, "You couldn't give me that. You couldn't give it to me." I'd be like, "No, I'm good." No, but it's worth that 10. I don't care. I don't want it. I don't want to have it. It's just I feel I don't. I don't like it. And but people buy it, and that's fine. So anyways, he says, as he mentioned last week, he's looking to move into a new house. He might have some flexibility in terms of seating distance when he does. So it's advisable to sit closer or farther away than 12 feet, or if he's comfortable with that distance, is it fine? You sit on top of the speakers for all I care, man. You knock yourself out. You don't put them all about an inch from your head and then get like a monoblock for each one of them.
I mean, other than avoiding sitting smack dab in the middle of your room, which is always kind of difficult to deal with. I mean, 12 feet is a completely normal distance to sit from speaker. Yeah. There's, I don't know if I've come across a consumer level speaker that isn't designed to hit 105 dB from 4 meters away with a normal AV receiver. That's like every normal consumer speaker is designed to do that. Your KEF reference are in fact capable of even more than that. Right. But I mean, if you're comfortable at 12 feet, that's what feels good to you, and that's what is good for your screen size. That is a totally normal seating distance. No particular reason to change.
I mean, if you're shopping for a house and you're looking for some stuff, I mean, the number one thing I would look for is an enclosed room.
Yes.
That's literally the only that when I shop for houses, I walked in the house, I'm like, where's the home theater going to go? Yeah. And it's not going to be in this big room with everything else. Yeah. It's not going to be here. You don't want me in here watching TV when we're trying to eat dinner. You don't want the TV on when dinner's going, or when friends are over. You don't want the kids playing video games in here while we're trying to talk with our friends. Where's the home theater room where we can close the door? Yep. And that's the number one thing I would look for. And then if that gives you a 12 foot, 15, 18, 20,
or
whatever.
10, or 8,
or
it could
6,
be shorter.
It could be very small. It could be a little bedroom. So that's what I would not worry about the seating distance. I would worry about where am I going to put my enclosed room? Which enclosed room gets my theater?
Agreed.
So in addition to aesthetics, he thought he might get some benefit from a monoblock for his centered speaker in terms of crosstalk. Nope, you're not going to. No.
Not with the amps that we recommend.
No. He saw the specs of the monoprice monolith amps and how low their crosstalk is, so he's aware it shouldn't be an issue. And looking around that Macintosh Parasound, all of them, they cost more than a 3-channel monolith. So can good looks and superficial aesthetics be enough of a reason? Is he being a sucker? Should he feel guilty? I don't care. If you've got more money, then and I'm not going to say where the sentence normally goes. If you've got so much money that this is not a big purchase for you, it doesn't matter. And what the thing is when you're talking to your friends, you can tell them whatever the heck you want about, oh yeah, it makes it sound so much better, blah blah blah. It just as long as when you talk to me, you say, I know it doesn't make a difference, but I like the way it looks. All right, we're good.
Absolutely. I have zero problem with someone selecting one amplifier over another simply because they like the way it looks better. Totally fine. I mean, as long as the price to you is acceptable. Right. The only thing you're
not taking food out of your kid's mouth. Nobody's college fund got raided. You dip into your 401k for this nonsense. If this is mad money that you can do whatever you want with, and this is what you want to do with it. Paint flames on the dang thing for all I care.
There's no question the monoprice monolith and the now outlaw Model 5000 that I'm suggesting to you, they have utilitarian looks. They are black metal boxes. They are not pretty. There's no way I could describe them as pretty. They are just utilitarian black metal boxes. And if you want something that looks really pretty and that's your reason for getting it, more power to you as long as you can afford it. I got no beef with that. Don't feel guilty about it. Just I just want people to be a little bit realistic and not be thinking that, because I'm getting this, it's going to sound no, it's not going to sound any different. But if you're like, I got it because I like it and it looks pretty, cool.
Yeah. Right. So the problem for me when you're spending a lot of money on AV equipment is there's a tendency or the desire to justify that purchase with claims of fidelity or power or whatever. And it's so often not the case that all these external DACs and
Yeah.
special wires and whatever
Power cleaning
amplifiers and
thingies. Yep.
power cords and speaker wire and crap like that, or platforms or whatever. Yeah, good sound, good picture can be had at a reasonable price. That's just true. And yes, you can buy something that's got, higher performance, a big fat amp that you don't need, but you're just not using any of that performance. And it's not giving you any higher fidelity. The place where it might with the amplifier is in noise floor. Provided that the amps are not clipping, that the speakers are not, having trouble being drawn or having some sort of weird impedance dips that doesn't play well with the amplifier. As long as there's nothing going wrong, all amps should sound the same. All amps that are designed to be
he was
flat
laughing
should
how
sound the same.
Gene at Audioholics, he put out a YouTube video that was like, not all amps sound the same, but it was like the specific example of a low wattage Class D connected to speakers that have really low impedance at high frequencies. A bunch of unusual factors, and yes, you could measure that even without clipping it was no longer a flat frequency response coming out of that amplifier connected to that speaker. So it isn't all amplifiers, but Outlaw and Monoprice with Class AB amps and big power supplies connected to KEF reference speakers. No, you'll be fine.
In that specific case Gene mentioned is like practically a straw man argument. It's like it's
the exception that proves the rule. That's what it is.
Well, yeah, it's like, okay, so it's still a performance issue based on an incompatibility between the speaker and the amplifier and the amplifier itself. And that one amplifier, right? Yeah, the one amplifier nobody has, but whatever. So, but if you're going to sit your friends in the room and start telling them why that this Macintosh is making your stuff sound better, just know that my ghost is in the room with you, looking over your shoulder, tisking you, sir. He's lying. He's lying. He's just trying to make you feel bad about your systems. Yeah, they're pretty though. I've seen them. They're gorgeous. I would love to have one. It would not sound any different than my system either. Thank you very much. Here we go. Martin from Denmark. Martin has built a room within a room inside of his garage. Martin, the man, the myth, the single probably. So, we almost got Liz to get one, and then she had a baby instead. Inside this dedicated theater, it's about 13.5 by 11.5 by 6.5 feet high. Whoa, no basketball players allowed, sir. Sorry, too tall, can't come in here. The ceiling is acoustic ceiling tiles with 1 foot of insulation above them, and he has 3 seats in an L shape, 2 sofa seats plus a chaise. And they are a third of the room's length from the back wall. He installed a 5.2.4 system with a SBS, a PP2000 in the middle of the front wall, and a PC2000 in the middle of the back wall. The bass response of the pair of subs at his middle seat is flat, and from 80 hertz on down, the 2 other seats are good too. But at around 85 to 90 hertz, there's a dip in the left and the right seats, while the middle remains flat. So right in this tricky crossover region, the bass is not uniform. He wants that uniformity, so he asks. You're not going to like my answer. Let me just tell you right now. I am going to predict you, sir, are going to not like my answer. So here we go. With upgrading to 4 subwoofers get it done, in the back of his mind, there's a voice saying that he needs 4 subs. Okay? I'm going to read through all of these. So we'll just read them all, and then we'll talk about it. Second, would corner bass traps actually be a better solution? How thick would they need to be in order to adequately address his 85 hertz dips? And third, is there some other solution entirely that hasn't been considered? Okay. So he's got acoustic tiles on the ceiling with a foot of insulation above him. So he's got like that whole thing done. Yeah. But we don't know what else is in this room, right? We have no idea how much.
I don't know what other room treatments.
So I will tell you that I think you should put bass trapping in your corners if you can.
Okay.
I don't know that this is going to fix this issue. My solution for your problem would be to change your crossover.
Okay.
That's the first thing I would do is I would adjust my crossover up to like 100 hertz, and I would adjust it down to 60 and see how that measures when you rerun Odyssey or whatever.
Yeah, because you are actually getting in that region, the exact region you're talking about, you have 3 or 4 sources of bass happening in that region, because you have your 2 subs that are still definitely playing at 85 and 90 hertz.
Right.
Plus, if it's a sound that's only in the one speaker, then that particular speaker is also making sounds at, say, 90 hertz. If it's in multiple speakers, right? So that can be why you're getting this non-uniformity. So
you need to have all your speakers set to small. So if you haven't done that, then that needs to be done immediately. Then you need to, if you just did that just now after I said it, rerun your Odyssey or whatever it is that you've got. Then see with the if you still have your problem here, then I would goose it up to 90 or 100 hertz and run it again.
Chances are that will actually be the solution, is raising the crossover, because the 2 subs on their own, without any other speakers also playing in that frequency range, they should be pretty darn uniform. Not necessarily linear without any EQ, but they should be pretty darn uniform. Therefore, if you raise the crossover so that the subs are predominantly playing that 90 hertz, 85 hertz sound, and the speakers are contributing very little at that point, that should help with the uniformity. So, I mean, that's free. That's a setting you can try without even
talking about overkill subs for a room. Holy moly. Jeez. PB 2000, PC 2000 in a room that's what, like 700 cubic feet or something like that. I don't know what it is. 13.5 by 11.5 by 6.5.
Well, that's a small room. Well, that's my sort of size of room, although mine's ever so slightly taller. But so that's the solution he maybe didn't consider, is just a settings change of raising his crossover. Now, the other ones, honestly, if the issue is the combination of speakers and subs, the other ones, well, the corner bass traps could help you. So that would be the second choice. If the problem is the combo of uniform subs but speakers also playing, then having 4 subs isn't going to help you. It wouldn't help you at all. You're still going to have that issue.
So it's free. Okay,
it's free to try to
stress how much I like free. Yeah. So that would be the number one thing I would do, is goose those things up. You got to make sure your speakers are set to small. If that hasn't happened for whatever reason, then don't leave me and tell me that your speakers are full range. I don't care.
That's
set
not
them
the
to
point.
Small, it over to 80, and then run it again.
Yeah,
and
cross them at 90, cross them at 100, try 120.
100.
Yeah.
With 2 subs, especially subs of this size, in this room, locating the sound, the way you have them set up in front of them, behind you, there's just I would have no problem setting them up at 100, maybe even 120, and not being worried about being able to locate or localize the sub, the bass playing
but
it. I don't think you'll be able to.
If that doesn't work, then corner bass traps, they are a way. Now, they basically need to be 6 inches thick. In fact, mathematically, I think you want 6.8 inches, I think is kind of what you need. Now, that is the combination of insulation and air gap. So if this is straddling a corner, that should really not be a problem. 4-inch thick insulation plus the air gap of the corner should absolutely be able to do this. If they're going to go flat in the corners and not straddling, then 4 inches of insulation with like a 2.5-inch air gap behind it would be what you're looking to do in terms of thickness.
All right. How long have we gone? Not too long. We got some time. Infinite
Gary. 1 hour
and
20 we've done.
Vincent Tio from HGTV Test recently went through the picture settings that are available from Sony and LG's 2020 OLED models. One new option is peak luminance, which Vincent explained is a setting that allows you to choose how much the white subpixel is used to boost overall light output. This lets you make SDR just as bright as HDR if you want to. It also lets you turn the white subpixel off entirely so that you're only using red, green, and blue subpixels. Even via YouTube video, when the white subpixel was turned off, it looked as though all the colors in the screen became more saturated and deeper in shade. So would that require a completely separate calibration? If you wanted to be really thorough, would you have to calibrate the colors separately for each of the peak luminance settings that activates the white subpixel to varying degrees? I mean, I just couldn't care less about this question. I just feel like once you calibrate your TV, once it's calibrated, they calibrate it with everything considered, and changing from one setting to another, you just leave it alone. You're done after it's that's the whole point of calibration. It's done.
There's a little bit of misunderstanding to start with, because in all of the previous year OLED models, the white subpixel essentially wasn't being used in SDR. If you look at the rate, like Arting's ratings, their measurements of peak light output in SDR mode versus HDR mode, the HDR mode is like twice as much, and that is essentially strictly the contribution of the white subpixel. It's just there to boost peak light output, and it more or less wasn't being used in SDR. Now you have the option to turn it on in SDR mode, so your SDR can have peak light output just as high as HDR for some crazy reason. I don't know why people are so obsessed with peak light output, but anyway, that's kind of what's going on there. It's not so much that in previous years the white subpixel was always on and now you have the option to turn it off. It's that you have the option to turn it on now in SDR mode, which didn't used to be the case. So effectively, this isn't going to make a difference because when you are calibrating SDR, you're only going to be calibrating up to the standard of 100 or sometimes 120 nits. That's what you'll be calibrating. If you then optionally decide to activate the white subpixel, there is no calibration you could do at that point to make it accurate. It is going to desaturate the colors, and there is no amount of boosting the color output that would bring that saturation back. The only solution is to turn the white subpixel back off. So there is no calibration that could be done to make this more accurate. In the HDR setting, what you're doing is starting with an SDR calibration and then just making sure that the EOTF, the electro-optical transfer function, is accurate, because you can't even worry about the color accuracy up at 600, 700, 800 nits. There's the white subpixel has to be on for that, and there's nothing you can do about it in the calibration as far as the color goes. So the effective response is that this isn't going to make a difference. You'll still do the same calibration you used to do. In a theoretical sense, I mean, even there, you're still going to be calibrating at the standard of 100 or 120 to start. And then you're just losing saturation above that, but there's nothing you can do about it.
I just took a little vacation in my head.
That's fine.
I'll come back later. But he's got a lot of questions here. I'm scrolling through them, like, holy
They're
moly.
multi-part.
So they
Single
are.
answers.
He asked, did Rob say his Odyssey setup only chirps 3 times from each speaker? Gary quickly tried his Marantz SR6011. It chirped 10 times from each speaker. Which one of us is counting incorrectly? Both of y'all are fools. It chirps 5 times. Mine chirps 5 times. I can guarantee I've done it so many times. Yeah, it does. Woo, 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 woo.
Oh.
Absolutely.
No, well, I was counting incorrectly. Mine goes 10 times. It does the toot, 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 toot. That's what it does.
No.
Yeah.
Mine definitely doesn't do 10 times. It definitely does 5. I'd run it again, but I'm not going to.
Well, in any case, I will take full responsibility. It is definitely not 3, Gary.
So it doesn't matter. Phil Jones has started posting training videos for Sound United on YouTube. Phil Jones, didn't we interview him?
We did talk to Phil Jones.
I thought we did.
From Sound United.
Gary got a bit confused when he started talking about the 20 different overhead speaker positions that are available with the Den X8500H of the Marantz AV8805. Phil was saying that you need to tell your receiver or pre-pro which speakers you have, so the Atmos decoder and the object-based audio renderer can process the audio signals correctly for the speakers that you actually have. He was saying if you have all-in ceilings, make sure you tell receiver that, or if you have a combination of angled speakers high up on your walls plus a pair of upward firing and Atmos-enabled speakers, tell your receiver that so everything's processed correctly. So what is actually being processed differently depending on what speakers you say you have? It's telling the thing where the speakers are so it can do the thing.
Oh yes, that's very descriptive, Tom. No, actually,
I mean, that's what it is, though. I mean, you tell it where the speakers are, because if the sound's supposed to be coming between 2 speakers and it doesn't know where the speakers are, it doesn't know what speakers to be playing. That's what it's doing.
That is more or less it. I mean, really what it breaks down to is these are physically above and in front of me, well in front of me, only somewhat in front of me, directly above me, somewhat behind me, or well behind me. That's the things there. Or there are so when we say there's 20 overhead positions, there are the 4 positions that can only be used by Oro 3D. So those don't apply to Atmos or DTS-X. And then there are the 6 possible positions for upward firing speakers. All right, so the easiest one to explain is the upward firing one, because as long as you say I'm using Dolby enabled speakers, I'm using Dolby speakers for my 4 overhead positions or 6 overhead positions, In that case, a actual frequency response filter is applied to upward firing speakers to try and trick you into believing that the sound is coming from above you instead of somewhere beside you or in front of you or behind you. So that is an actual processing frequency response equalization that's applied when you tell your AV receiver that you have Dolby speakers being used. So that one's important. But the other ones are just giving that positional data. In front of me, how much in front of me. So tops are a little in front of me, heights are well in front of me. That's basically all that is. And it uses that information to decide what mix of speakers it needs to try and position the object audio wherever it's going in the room. Now, Monoprice did a great job of explaining that in the instance of if you say you have top rears and surround backs, that it might put sound into both of those speakers to try and make it sound like it's coming from above and well behind you. Mm-hmm. And it'll give you this sort of weird mix of surround back and top rear speaker. Whereas if you say you have a rear height speaker, then anything that would have been in like a top rear sort of collapses to the rear height, and anything that would have gone into both a surround back and a top rear comes solely from a rear height. So in that sense, if you want the most discrete sound and the least amount of mixing between speakers, then the height positions are the ones to go for. But yeah, that's how it's processing things based on what positions you say you have.
Is Odyssey doing different calculations based on what overhead positions you say you have?
Yeah.
It's the whole point.
Well, wait, Odyssey. Odyssey. No, the renderer is doing different calculations. Odyssey.
But yes, go ahead.
Odyssey is still just trying to give you matched levels and whatever the target frequency response is, whether it's the reference curve or the flat curve or something that you made up yourself in the Odyssey editor app. So Odyssey is still treating each of the speakers the same, other than Dolby-enabled upward firing speakers. Those, it is just trying to apply Dolby's own frequency response curve.
Right. So it's trying to basically,
Yeah. But the renderer in the, say, Atmos decoder or the DTS-X decoder or the Oro 3D decoder, it is doing different calculations based on the positions that you say that you have.
So is it a matter of in-ceiling speakers or top speakers mounted high on the wall, or height speakers, and up firing or Dolby speakers? Phil said, tell your receiver what speakers you have, but how do you actually do that? It's about angles.
It is about angles.
Gary.
That's right.
It really. So if your space, just let's say you were in an infinitely, your walls to either side, right, were say your room is 17 feet wide. Let's just 20 feet wide, 9 feet tall, and infinity feet front to back. Okay. So you're in this hallway from doom, and your system is sitting in there. Your front speakers would be on the ground. Your surround speakers would be at floor level. Your surround back speakers would be at floor level. Your top middles would be right overhead. Mm-hmm. Your front heights, your top
fronts.
Top fronts would be at a certain elevation in front of you, and if you put them further out, you'd have to call them
heights.
Heights. Or front
heights, they want them at a 30-degree elevation angle. Tops, they want at a 45-degree elevation angle, and there's some leeway there. The heights could go between 30 and 45. The tops could go between, they actually say anywhere between 30 and 55, but basically, if it's closer to you at like a 45-degree elevation angle, that would you call it a top. If you are close enough to say your back wall, which might be the case, that even if the speaker is mounted on your back wall physically, but you're close enough to your back wall that elevation angle is like 45 degrees or 50 degrees, then you would call that a top speaker, even though it's physically on your back wall, simply because that's the angle range into which you've fallen, as opposed to where a height speaker would go. The one that is very clear is a Dolby speaker. A Dolby speaker is only an upward firing speaker. That's the only instance you would call it a Dolby speaker.
So in the same video, Phil goes over Odyssey and manually overriding things like crossover frequency. Afterwards, he says that Odyssey will measure the output from your speakers and tell you whether they are considered large or small based on their ability to output bass frequency. But in Phil's case, even with the Wilson Watt puppy front speakers that he uses, which are like $75,000 a piece or something like that, they're ridiculous, he still doesn't set them to large, and instead he manually gives them a crossover frequency to the subs. Thank you,
Good.
Phil. Thank you, Phil, for listening to this podcast and listening to science. Thank you for being like the one person who sells this stuff, who is not afraid to say that he takes his full range speakers and crosses them over to subs because that's the right thing to do. So why does the auto setup quite often set speakers to large or full range, particularly in cases where even by Odyssey's own measurements, they clearly not play down to 20 hertz? Because there's a lot of people who can be super angry if they bought a speaker that plays down to 60 hertz that they were told was full range, that it doesn't get. They'll throw their receipt. They'll call Odyssey, says your thing's broken,
and what,
because it doesn't say my thing's full range.
Once again, to be totally clear, Odyssey doesn't actually set large or small.
No, yeah,
Odyssey does the
true.
measurement. They pass that measurement information over, and it's actually Dan and Armarantz in this case who decides whether that thing is called.
That's the thresholds.
It is. And primarily, if you have a speaker that has, like they're sort of looking for the -3 and the -6 decibel points. And if the -6 decibel point is above 40 hertz, then they'll usually set that speaker to small and give it a crossover. If the -6 decibel point is below 40 hertz, they'll typically set that speaker to full range. So that's just what Denon and Marantz have decided. Odyssey's just passing along the measurements. And the why is, like Tom says, people get mad if it doesn't set their tower speakers to large because they want it to.
So when you manually change speakers that were auto set up as large to small instead, and you change the crossover frequency, how does the receiver reconcile the EQ that Odyssey would have calculated versus the speakers now being set to small? For example, if you set the speakers to large and then apply the boost in the EQ, say at like 40 hertz, is that EQ boost still there when you manually change the speakers to small? How does the receiver know what to use and what to ignore? It measured the subwoofer separately.
No, but he's talking about like it measures the speaker, it auto set the speaker to large. And then to try and make that quote-unquote large speaker have pretty flat frequency response, it put a boost somewhere down in the bass, right? But then you come along and you manually set the speaker to small now with, say, an 80 hertz crossover. Is it still using that same EQ curve that it calculated when the speaker was set to large?
Yeah, at 40, it can boost it up by 6 dB, but 6 plus 0 is still, is still inaudible to the human ear. So it's not actually doing anything.
Yeah, even more than that, though, it actually just, once you have set the speaker to small and set the crossover frequency, from that point down, it's just applying a high-pass filter. There's nothing else going on below the crossover frequency that you set. So with the speaker set to small and a crossover frequency selected, everywhere below that point, it's just the high-pass filter that's being applied. And the rest is ignored, whatever Odyssey calculated when it used to be set to large.
Christian just bought a JVC NX7 projector. Seems to be a theme for today. He's using it with an Oppo UDP203 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and he loves... Sorry. I saw something crawling on the ground. Since we've got this, it could be we've got this open pipe outside, and we have cockroaches, and they call them palmetto bugs, but they're like 3 inches long, and one almost hit me in the head while I was doing dishes today. And I called my plumber. That was yesterday. Called my plumber yesterday and said, "You people are going to fix this." And I said some bad words. I'll be honest. The language got a little blue, and you got till Friday to fix it, or you guys are all right. That's it. You guys are gone. So Christian, whatever. Oppo, yes, he loves the Oppo. He would prefer to keep using it. He turned on the JVC's frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping for HDR, and to his eyes, it looks really good. But he keeps reading about the supposed benefits of the Panasonic players, particularly the flagship UB9000. So does that Panasonic really do something with the tone mapping that would look way better, or would it be a step up at all over his Oppo? I'm going to say no.
In the case of the projector that you have, which is almost unique. I mean, it's the JVCs, the NX7, NX5, NX9. They have this frame-by-frame tone mapping. There is an LG ultra short throw projector out there that has frame-by-frame tone mapping now. They borrowed that processing from their OLEDs. But other than those projectors, no other projectors have frame-by-frame tone mapping where they just analyze the incoming signal themselves. They ignore the metadata and then analyze it on a frame-by-frame basis. So you do not need a Panasonic. Your JVC does a fantastic job of taking the HDR signal. It ignores the metadata that's in there and says, I'm going to look at this myself and do what I think is right. And it does a fantastic job of doing it. The Panasonic is very useful for almost all other projectors, because all other projectors, they don't have a frame-by-frame analysis. They're just set up to mostly expect 1000 nit metadata. That's really all they're set up to expect. I guess we've got that one Chang Hong model now that does Dolby Vision. Although it's pretty questionable, the actual performance of the thing, but it exists. So yeah, all other projectors do benefit, but you don't need it. Continue using your Oppo. You've got a fabulous projector to pair with it.
All right, Galen. Galen is trying to find a receiver for his father-in-law in the $200 to $250 price range. Have you heard of accessories for less? Because that's where it'll be.
Yeah. Well, honestly, they have no Yamahas in stock at all. Not a single one right now. So the stock is low on things as of this recording.
His father-in-law uses 4 speakers in his home theater room, although the surround speakers are about 20 feet behind the couch, and they are run through an inline volume control, so it doesn't exactly have proper surround sound. I mean, it's proper surround sound. It's just not level matched. Then he has 3 more pairs of speakers, one in the front of the room, a second out on the front porch, and a third on the back patio. All these speakers were wired into only 3 pairs of binding posts on his old receiver, so he was never looking to play different sources at the same time, just one source that could be played throughout the house. That old receiver has died. How would we suggest wiring the speakers? Maybe get a 7.1 receiver, set with a 5.1 with the Phantom sensor. In the home theater, then wire all 3 pairs of the other speakers to zone 2. Would it damage that zone 2 output to have 3 pairs of speakers wired to it? Do you wire? I mean, you could, but they have zone 3s these days.
But at this price point,
maybe not this price
at
point.
This price point, you're not going to get.
So you could wire one in series and one in parallel. One, right? We could do.
Yeah, you could actually just wire all 3 in series. Although that's. Well, I mean, it's not that bad because you can just home run all of the pairs of speaker wire, and then you're just going to have red from the binding post of the receiver to speaker number 1, black from the binding post of the receiver to speaker number 3, and then black of speaker 1 goes to red of speaker 2, and black of speaker 2 goes to red of speaker 3. And you can do all of that back at your AV receiver. Like, I'm assuming the speaker wire's already been run because he was already using this thing. So you can wire it all in series, because even with, like, if it's 3 8-ohm speakers all wired together, it's going to be like a 20-ohm load, something like that. I mean, it's still going to be fine.
Right. I mean, he would need something that would just put out mono to everything too, I guess, right?
Well, it doesn't have to, because it's pairs of speakers on the porch and the back patio.
Oh, they're pairs of speakers.
It's pairs of speakers in the other rooms, so it doesn't have to be a mono output. So
I was confused
you could also, wire 2 of the pairs of speakers in series, and then the third pair of speakers to the zone 2 output in parallel. That should also be fine. So yeah, just make sure you don't wire all 3 in parallel. That's the only wiring.
You don't want to take all the black wires and put them into one, and all the red wires and put them into another. That would all be parallel.
That would all be parallel. And you're probably looking at like a 2-ohm load at that point.
2-ohm load, yeah.
That could damage the zone 2 output. So as
I mean, as long as you don't turn it up loud at all.
We don't recommend. Don't wire all 3 in parallel.
Highly not at this price point. How do you feel about a Macintosh monoblock amplifier? Because then you could.
Not going to be for $200. But yeah, so all 3 of those additional speakers in series, or 2 of them in series with each other, plus the third one in parallel, that'll be fine. You won't blow anything up. The Zone 2 will be able to power it. I think this is the right way to go. I think you get a 7.1 receiver. You wire up your home theater as a normal 5.1 setup with a Phantom center, in this case, a 4.1 setup. And then you have Zone 2 available there. So when you want to turn on these 3 other pairs of speakers, now all 3 of those pairs of speakers are going to be playing the same source. That's just going to be what it is. But that's fine. Now, in terms of what to get at this price point, it's a little bit tricky, even at Accessories for Less, to get for $250. Now, coming up later, Galen's actually saying he might be willing to chip in a little bit of money. So I'm going to take him at his word there. And I'll say that the least expensive one that can do everything that he described, and this is important because Onkyo's TXSR 494, that is available at Accessories for Less. It's $320 over there. So that is over the $250, but if Galen was willing to chip in a little bit. Now, it does not actually have Zone 2. It has Zone B. And the difference there is that when they call it Zone 2, you can have two different sources playing. One source playing just in the main theater, the surround sound setup, and a second different source playing out of the Zone 2 speakers. In this case, with this Onkyo 494, the Zone B means that it can only play the same source as what is already playing in the main zone. You just have the option to turn it on or off. That's all that Zone B gives you. Now, that's what he said he wanted to do, that he was only ever playing one source through everything anyway, so that could be sufficient. Right. And the actual advantage there is that in the case of the 494, Zone B works with a digital input.
Which is nice.
Because the other one I'm going to talk about, Zone 2, will only work with an analog stereo input, and that is the case for most low-priced receivers that have a Zone 2.
I have a feeling he's only got analog.
I have a feeling he's only got analog anyway, but so with the 494, what's nice there is you can actually have a digital source playing in Zone A, by itself, your surround sound setup, in Zone B by itself, so you could actually have the three other speakers playing without the main zone playing, or in Zone A and B together. That's what the Onkyo can do for you. The other alternative would be the Denon S750H. That's available over at Accessories for Less for $350. So the difference there is it does have a Zone 2, but like I mentioned, the Zone 2 can only play an analog stereo source. So one of those two, if you're willing to chip in some money to help your father-in-law out.
All right. Any way to do this with a 5.1 receiver, since those are easier to find at this price point? You could basically do what we just said about the parallel, and you would do 2 in parallel, 2 in series, but you would wire it all to the front, left, and right speakers.
It's just that you would never be able to not have the other 3 speakers playing. Like all the speakers
would always
play. Yeah.
That's right. No matter what you're watching on TV.
It's playing on the patio.
The patio people get to experience it too.
I think it's worth having the option to turn off the other 3 speakers. Yeah.
So he asks if you should chip in some cash to get him a center speaker or maybe a new LCR set, maybe a good deal from our. I think this is a complete waste. I'd pay for the receiver.
Yeah.
This is the sort of this is the rabbit hole where you're like, I'm going to get you this new thing, and you're going to set it all up, and they're going to listen to it, and they're going to be like, I guess. You will have spent this money on this speaker that you know is better than what they've been experiencing. And then they're going to be like, I don't know. It's about the same.
Yeah. No, I think if you're going to chip in some money, do it on the receiver to get him what he really needs and wants.
Right. Michael, back in November, Michael asked about some design aspects for a dedicated home theater he's having built in the new home. We mentioned that a drop tile ceiling can offer some advantages, but when he quickly tried to look up some options online, he isn't sure he wants to go with a ceiling that looks like something you see in an office building. I can't disagree with you, sir. In general, but then again, remember, if this is a dedicated home theater, it's not going to look like it's in an office building because you're going to turn the lights off and you're not going to see anything. So in general, what challenges are posed by the ceiling in a dedicated theater room that is being built with favorable dimensions? Okay. Is part of it simply being a large, flat, reflective surface? Are we concerned about how it will impact the sound quality? There's a couple of things that in general, drop tile ceilings offer you. First of all, they offer you the ability to make instant and easy changes to in-ceiling speaker placements and wire runs and everything else with almost no hassle.
And lighting as well. Lighting is a big part of it. Yeah. So
then you can put acoustic tiles in there, and then above that you can put as well insulation. Mm-hmm. So you can now have basically your entire ceiling is no longer as reflective as it was. It is now able to absorb sound, and there's some advantages there. But the big thing is you can run all your wires up there. You can run all your you can put all your lights, and if you're like, I don't like the light in that square, I'm going to move it to this other square. You're like, wee, and just push it and just make sure you've got some play on those wires up there, and you're good to go.
Yeah, the big challenge in a purpose-built, dedicated home theater when it comes to the ceiling, if you're building a nice soundproof ceiling, it's 2 layers of drywall, green glue in between, sound clips and hat channels, the whole thing, is that if you're doing anything that's in ceiling lights, in ceiling speakers, well, you just put big holes in this whole soundproofing thing that you did, which, you can put properly constructed backer boxes like quiet boxes in behind that stuff. It can all be done, but it's just that is part of the big challenge. And then especially if you need to rerun a wire, reroute something, move a light, move a speaker. I mean, it's a big hassle when it's a fully constructed 2 layers of drywall. Now, I don't remember exactly what I said to Michael before, but my whole thing with the drop ceiling in a building this from the ground up scenario is I actually do still want you to build the shell of the room, including a solid ceiling. But then 1 foot below that solid ceiling, you install this T-bar ceiling so that you don't have to put any holes in the solid ceiling. You don't have to run any wires behind the solid ceiling. You can do all of that stuff in this 1 foot deep drop tile ceiling. And then that drop tile ceiling with acoustic ceiling tiles can act as absorption. It can act as diffusion because there are diffusion ceiling tiles you can install as well. And you can put insulation. You could even put a sound blocking mass loaded vinyl layer back there to give you even more isolation. So that's why I think a drop tile ceiling in a built from the ground up room offers those advantages. It gives you a place to easily change, move, run wires without putting actual permanent holes in a solid ceiling.
Cool. Yeah, and the other thing too is when you're doing all this crazy stuff by installing in-ceiling speakers and everything else, somebody comes in there and goes, "Ew, I don't like any of this," and you say, you're selling the house. It's all removable.
Yes,
it's all gone. We take all of this out. It's just a normal room underneath all this.
That's right.
And they're like, oh, okay then. You can just show them. Lift the drop tile ceiling. Look, look at there's the ceiling right there. We take this out, a little bit of putty.
And if you really hate the look of the ceilings themselves, you put a layer of fabric across the ceiling that you're seeing, the underside of the drop tile ceiling. You put a layer of speaker cloth.
Yeah. So he says, if a drop tile ceiling were installed, won't the individual ceiling tiles vibrate? Are there workarounds? Is there a specialized type of drop ceiling that's a better alternative for home theaters? I'm sure that this is the case. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there are specialized ceiling tiles that do have advantages for home theater. As far as the vibration, no, because the ceiling tiles themselves are soft. I mean, technically, are they vibrating? So yeah, I'm sure they are, but they're soft, so you're not going to hear them vibrating in the T-bar system. But maybe he was only looking at the really thin sort of plastic ceiling tiles, and those aren't the type that you want, even though they're super cheap. Those aren't the type you want. You would want to get ones that are at least if you have the solid ceiling above, and this is mostly a convenience and aesthetics thing, then you just get the 1 inch thick made of fiberglass type of ceiling tile. If you go over to Acoustical Solutions, they sell ones that basically come in any finish on the underside, any color that you want, because they just put Guilford of Maine fabric onto some 1 inch thick insulation or 2 inch thick insulation.
Right.
So, I mean, you're looking at $20 to $30 per tile when they do that, 2x2 tiles, so it's way more expensive than the little plastic tiles, but they're effective as essentially a room treatment because it's insulation, and aesthetically they look really nice with the fabric. They also do, if you don't have the solid ceiling above, if this drop tile ceiling, what's above there is just open ceiling joists, they actually have specially made acoustic ceiling tiles with a sound blocking barrier layer, which is essentially just a mass loaded vinyl layer, plus a fire coating, which is really important if that's what you're going to do. Now, those do end up going for $40 each. So they're not cheap, but
it's cheaper just to put up the drywall.
Yeah, well, exactly. But it just exists. So Acoustical Solutions has all that stuff. We'll have links for that. AVRant.com.
All right, we're going to call it right here. I really wanted to answer the next question because he has a very good picture of me in it.
Yes.
But we are done for this week. So who's next?
We can't.
Yeah, we're done.
Oh, that's
It's
too bad.
we could, but we're not gonna.
We're not going to.
I am.
Okay.
I am. I've got to get up early tomorrow,
All right.
and next week, if we go a little long, it's during
We're
the day.
during the
I'll just
day.
be hungry.
Good to know. Good to know. All right. So Alvin C is the person that Tom was talking about. You'll be first up next. We have Chris T, Carl R, Matt G, Bobby M. Was that? No, Alfonso F is also on the list. And yeah, of course, questions came in on Monday, Tuesday. They'll be on the list as well for next week.
All right. I'm going to thank our listeners of the week, Mike, for going to avrant.com and buying us a cup, clicking on the buy us a cup of coffee link and leaving us a PayPal donation, as well as our 116 patrons over at patreon.com, including Alvin.
That is right, Mike. Thank you very much
This
for that.
question I just skipped.
You did. That's it. We'll get to it.
Sorry, Alvin.
We'll get
Next week.
So, Mike, thank you very much for the PayPal donation. Yes, anybody looking to donate by PayPal, please do come to the website, avrant.com. Use the link there. And yeah, 116 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast for anyone else who might like to sign up. Alvin, thank you for being one of them.
That's right. I want to thank those who have thanked us for keeping the podcast going, including Martin from Denmark, Gurinder, Mike, Alvin, again, sorry, Alvin, John, Matt, and Fred, as well as Andrew for supporting the podcast by helping us out and for giving us a model for our next week's drawing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's helping boost our Patreon numbers. So, Andrew, thank you very much for sponsoring that giveaway. And I'll say the names again: Martin, Gurinder, Mike, Alvin, John, Matt, and Fred. We appreciate your notes of gratitude and congratulations. Some of those were like, hey, congrats on 700 episodes. That was really nice to receive. So thank you. Thank you to everybody who continues to listen to us.
Just remember to get your question answered on next week or some week's podcast. Email us at question@avrant.com.
Mm-hmm.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.